Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon when you're watching this. I never know who's a night owl, who's a morning owl, right? So we are going to be getting into Module 6, which is social institutions. A little bit of a disclaimer before we get going. Social institutions is a massive category of information. For example, one of my decks has over 79 slides, and then I have 3 decks. I don't cover all of this in regards to my in-person either. I jump around and try to have some fun with it in-person, engage conversation. However, that being said, if you are interested in learning a little bit more of the institutions that are incorporated within this, please go through the deck on your own time. There's lots of information: dating and courtship, marriage, family, education, health, environment, so like environmental sociology, the ways that we interact with corporations and the world around us. These are all connected to what is social institutions. Social institutions, in essence, is simply just that: the institutions that surround us, the infrastructure of society that keeps everything ebbing and flowing and going in the right direction. But without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk about Sociology 101. Let's talk about Module 6, which is social institutions. I hope you enjoy this lecture. I hope you learned something. And yeah, if you ever need any questions or answers, let me know. I am glad to go over them with you, but bear with me. I'll get this all set up. Okie dokie. Almost there, y'all. My apologies again. Takes a little while to get it the way I want it. Because I like to start out by talking to you so you can see me. It'd be easier just to go into the deck, but I want to be able to give you introductions. All right, so let's get to it, right? Social 101, Module 6, Social Institutions. I'm Instructor McQueen or Professor McQueen, whichever you like. Let's get to this. Let's have this conversation, and I'm excited to go through this path with you. All right, so first things first, let me make this share a little larger. All right, perfect. Okay. So in the topic of social institutions, what you're looking at are many different areas, as I mentioned before. This can cover everything from dating and courtship and marriage, all the way to the way that corporations and society itself bases and builds upon each other into this social construction of day-to-day life, the institutions that guide us and are around us. Right now, we're going to focus a little bit more on dating, courtship, and marriage. So why are these important? Well, the foundation of the world in many ways is based around the family unit and how we get there. So how do we get there? Dating and courtship. And many of the ways that everything is broken down, taxes, life in general, is as such, right? It's based around the process of a family. A family builds the infrastructure of a lot of things, right? So let us discuss this. As talked about on the slide, there are, when it comes to dating and courtship, similarities on culture, race, education level, religion, age, and proximity have traditionally impacted the choices of you and everyone who's watching this, whether you think it does or not, right? You may think that you are just totally open to all love. Love is love. But we all have preferences, right? We all have a type, is what we hear a lot on TikTok and social media in the world that we're around. And a lot of times this type is very much based around geographical proximity or location, as well as being with people we feel are of the same background as us. Are you raised in a culture that we share similarities of socialization? Race plays a large part, or culture, ethnicity plays a large part in our decisions. Many people face scrutiny for dating outside their pool, right? Unfortunate, but it's there. Education level, again, really big. If you can't have spurious conversations and academic conversations with people who study, it gets hard. Religion, this is a big one I can give an example on. My mother wouldn't marry my father unless he converted from being atheist to Christian. Same thing with my sister. She didn't marry her high school sweetheart, who she dated for 15 years, because he would not convert to Christianity. So that's a big thing. Religion is huge. Age, this is a topic constantly being heard about. What is too young? What is too old? Many people have different views on this. Some people will not date someone who is younger. Traditionally, men date younger women, but there are men who date older women, and they even face scrutiny on that. A lot of guys will give them a little bit of tear the Mickey out of them, right? And proximity. I don't want to date someone, nor has it been shown that someone would date someone that is too far away. Long distance doesn't tend to work. But Bassard in 1932 did a study on geographical proximity and how much that really plays into our day-to-day interactions and love life. And what he showed, so not surprising, is that 1/3 of married couples lived less than 5 blocks apart. So Cupid may have wings, but apparently they're not adapted for long flights. Just for a little bit more relevant conversation here, in 2019, a study on online dating nationally, geographic proximity was most important. It ended up still showing that even when people were using their application, such as all the dating apps you use, I've been with my wife for 13 years. I've never used any of these apps. So this is just me off of what I've read, right? But like Tinder, Hinge, all those, Bumble, right? These are the things where people will not increase their geographic location, but there's been studies saying if you want to find love, maybe do that. But then again, most data shows that's not going to work. So, little fun thing here, right? Don't be sad. Distance makes art grow fonder. Dwight says it. Out of sight, out of mind. Statistically, people tend to find their partner within the same geographical area. This ties to the idea we just spoke about. And it's actually true because you share value, norms, socialization. My wife, who I've been with for 13 years, right? We ended up living only 10, 15 minutes from each other, but it took integration between other social networks of friends and family and just outside the box friends that produced a reality where I met my wife. So yes, I married someone who I didn't know and met her at a party, at a house party, but it ended up being that we're from the same area, and that's played a huge part in our socialization because we don't have to like jump to conclusions about talking with each other. So that's a big deal. What do you think about that? Do you find that this is accurate? Do you think that when it comes to courting and dating, that it's really important to have a religious connection, a ethnicity and culture connection, a geographical location? What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear about our Yellow Dig. Again, just for this class, I've decided I started in the beginning, but now no longer doing it. This is a great joke by Bo Burnham. If you want to listen to it, please let me know. If you have, interesting conversation, but we're not going to play it for this video. So let's talk about marriage. So when it comes down to this, important for your quiz here, right? Marriage by definition is a contract based on sexual intimate relationship that implies permanent unionship, right? It's legal, so it has a lot of tax benefits. It has a lot of codified benefits to those who are with it. It's changed over time. There's not as many huge benefits towards taxation of marriage, but there still is some. So the system is legal. And why I think it's legal? Because for a long time, we had to fight against the reality of who can and can't be married. And that might be up for debate recently with a lot of scoutists looking into Griswold v. Connecticut, Loving v. Virginia. So please keep an eye on that. That's scary because they're looking at getting rid of the sodomy law, which is going to then incorporate equal marriage. And then they're going to be looking at the idea of Loving v. Virginia, which is anti-miscegenation laws. So we're going to be looking at, are we going to start trying to block people marrying outside of their categorizational race categories? Scary, right? But it sounds good and all that it's legal, but what does that mean? What does it mean when it's legal? Well, when the government puts their hands in things, they start making changes, right? Alimony, child support, emotional baggage, expenses, legal fees to remove and annul, and ways that you can get out of the contract because people always be shifty. I don't know if you know, I only know this from personal experience from someone I know. You can divorce someone and sue them on loss of love. That's the thing, look it up. I can sue you because you made me lose love and win it. Weird, right? Anyway, cohabilitation, this is another stage of the relationship process, right? The union without a contract. Without it being legal, it has faced a lot of stipulations and a lot of stigma. But there has been a lot more people doing this. So stigma drops, it becomes more common. 11.5% of the population as of 2011 are part of cohabilitation, which is a 13% increase from 2009 in the US Census in 2010. So you're starting to see a little increase, but no contract. What do you say? What's the catch? Well, there's a lot of catches. Honestly, cohabilitation has faced a lot of scrutiny and a lot of inequalities, many times because those who would cohabilitate historically were part of the queer community. So what you ended up having is a lot of legal loopholes, a lot of legal benefits not being allotted to them. So, well, without it being legal, there's not the same benefits that were handed to them. And there has been a lot of innovation in this. And there have been a lot of new insurances and policies being given to people who are cohabilitating as opposed to people who were married. So that's a great thing. But let's talk a little bit more about cohabilitation. First things first, what do the stats say? Well, trial run. That's kind of what people think of it as, right? Like, let's live together before we get married. Well, what does that mean? Let's look at the stats. 28% of men and women live together before their first marriage. Okay, only 15% of men and women don't marry after living together. Interesting. Half of those who live together transition into marriage within 3 years. This is what the US Census says in 2010. But let's look at a comparison, right? You can't really have data without checking its reliability and validity, like we learned about in research methods. Well, in comparison, 18% of men, as opposed to 23% of women, married without ever living together. So the Census Bureau in 2010 said this, so you're not seeing that this trial run maybe matters, right? These data isn't that statistically relevant. 5% is a lot, right? So when we look at that, it's kind of a change, but what you are seeing is that there's not so much there, but so it's better, right? I guess it's better, but living together has shown little impact on the success of marriage overall. That's the key point there. That's what we're looking at this social institution. The group behavior analysis and the sociological understanding are seeing that there isn't really this fine line that you have to cohabilitate before you get married. But they're also showing that because it doesn't have that great of an impact overall, a significant one, that it's still a choice you can make. So those who do not live together have shown slightly better rates of remaining married for longer than 10 years. Jason said this in 2010, and maybe that's because they get to have a lot of firsts together, but in the same time, a lot of times if you aren't prepared to live with your partner, that could cause problems. So interesting that Jason points that out in 2010. So what can be done with cohabilitation? Well, the highest median age for marriage has been reported ever being tracked, right? Right now, as of 2010 and even further now, 26-year-old for women, which is a significant change, and 38-year-old for men, which is a significant change, waiting to actually get married. So we're seeing a decrease in the youth getting married, and it's taking people longer. Is that because they're doing a career? Is that because they're putting, women are freezing their eggs? There's a lot of conversation on this. I'd love to hear some thoughts from women in this class as well as men. Why do we see this number increasing? Any thoughts? Please share with me. So here's the question. Sorry, sociology, we're known as pessimists for a reason, because let's be honest, we point out the facts, no one listens to us. So is it marketing or is it love? Well, the tradition of spending several months' salary on an engagement ring was marketing campaign created by De Beers in the 1930s. If you didn't know about this, you're welcome. Before World War II, only 10% of engagement rings contained diamonds at all. By the end of the 20th century, 80% did. And this was the diamonds are forever. This idea of diamonds are a girl's best friend. This was a marketing campaign. So De Beers created a cultural universal. Crazy, right? With cult material, right? With this idea of material culture, they were able to create a marketing by owning the actual mills. So what essentially happened is De Beers actually was able to claim diamond mines, and then started like not providing a large quantity of said process. By limiting the resource, they controlled supply and demand, and thus by using marketing, they're able to create a higher pathway of profitability and want by using spokespeople, celebrities, moral entrepreneurism, right? This brought a symbology that if my man loves me, if my woman loves me, they'll get me a ring. Beyonce's, if you liked it, then you should have put a ring on it, right? So you're looking down this path. So De Beers created a cultural universal by just having a simple tagline. Another one of this is halitosis, if you're familiar with that. We used to use Listerine to clean floors. We used to wipe floors with it. And so they switched it and realized it could be used as mouthwash. But what happened was a lot of people didn't want to put the stuff they were cleaning floors with in your mouth. So they created this construct of negative marketing. And negative marketing has been used throughout time, not as much anymore. My background's in marketing, if you're more familiar, but they used it because they could then insult people to encourage them to buy things. Your friend has bad breath, get them Listerine. So it was a big thing. So you see the power of marketing. And I'd love to cover that deeper in a marketing class. It's my specialty. But symbols, symbolic interactionalism, have power. Norms create habits. Habits are then transferred into habitualization. Habitualization then supersedes your knowledge and is socialized into the younger generations, which then becomes the norm of the time, right? So is it love or is it competition? Think about this with conspicuous consumption. Why are diamonds forever? Why do they signify such love if they're just something that was there and before the World War II, only 10% of people even did it at all, right? Emeralds, rubies, topazes, other things were used. Historically, women in marriage and women were done by dowries paid to the groom's husband, because if the woman didn't end up being a good wife, they could get paid. Marriage was used as a tool. It's fascinating stuff when you look into it. Segue into this. So with this conversation, what is a family? For point of reference for the quiz, read the slide. A socially recognized group that has emotional and economic bonds. That's the definition of family. That'll be a quiz. Typically formed by marriage, cohabitation, blood, and or adoption. There are different types of families. Family of orientation. This is the one that you're born into. You don't really have a choice. This is a prescribed status, right? It's something that ascribed status. So you don't have a choice. You're born into this family, you're in the family, whether you decide to communicate with them, that is your choice, but you are a member of that family. Family of procreation. My mom used to say, there's an old quote that when men marry, they marry away from their family. It's a weird quote, probably a sexist quote, but it's interesting because the family you choose to create, many times you start identifying with in a different level of severity and importance because this is your family. So it's the family you create, right? You chose to create it. You weren't just born into it, you made this family, whether that has children or not. The structure of that family is your own. It's your family of procreation. And then this is not really talked about in this class. It's a higher level sociology form. It's probably not even theory, but family of choice. A family of choice, connection, and shared values does not require genetics or blood traits. Best friends, besties, the people you surround yourself with, especially people a part of the LGBTQ plus community. When you've had a lot of situations where coming out cost you family, you can have Friendsgiving, Friends Christmas, right? You have a new type of family that serves a purpose of support, emotional support, bonding, and knowledge. Any thoughts on these types of families? Let me know. I'd love to talk about it in Yellow Big. So the family life cycle stages isn't really considered like as important anymore. A lot of times we don't utilize it. Essentially in sociology, we've seen that the dichotomy of families or the breakdown of families isn't as liminal as this. This is the old method. What is important here is to know that the hardest part for families is actually in the after you have the idea of the first or the second child. There's a lot more strain on the family. So we see the situation as the procreation family and the school-age family. This tends to be when there's a lot less happiness in regards to a marriage, because now it went from being a dyad to a triad. It has a longer longevity. However, it tends to be that once the birth of the first child happens, what you see now is that there's a little bit more strain on the relationship. But the stages here, good to know about if you're interested, especially if you're FHD or psychology. But yeah, and you may notice the term on number 7, which is empty nest syndrome. People use this a lot. There are types of marriages and arrangements. These are probably pretty known to you because we talk about them a lot in the media right now, but do you understand them? Well, let's see. Monogamy is the most common, right? This is 2 people in a relationship. It's the most common union within the United States. It's not the most common internationally. Polygamy, more than 2 lovers, actually a majority of cultures accept this. In fact, according to Murdoch in 1967, it's about 78% of people who accept this. So, in the United States, we're very monogamous, but that doesn't really mean that that's the standard of norm. Another thing to challenge yourself here in sociology is what's norm and what's not norm. Polygamy, 1 man, multiple women. This is the most common type. Polyandry, 1 woman, multiple men in relationships. Only about 1% of the world's cultures practice this, according to Atman and Giant in 1996. And in bigamy, this idea is entering into a marriage while still married. This is seen as a felony in most states, especially because marriage is legal, right? Not everywhere this is a thing, but yeah. So you have different dynamics when it comes to monogamy, polygamy, polyandry, different ways of looking at love. One important term in sociology that we use is kinship. What this really means is looking at your family dynamic. Which family history matters to our ancestry? Well, that breaks down differently generation to generation. US tends to focus on both, so we don't really hold to a patriarchal or matriarchal system. It tends to be both sides are viewed and traced, but bilateral descent traces both sides of this. This is what we use in the United States, and 60% of modernized nations follow this, but there is unilateral descent tracing only one side, patrilineal, matrilineal, or ambilineal. 40% of other cultures follow this. Kinship, matrilineal societies, if you're interested, read the slide on here. There's a lot of connections to Native American or Indigenous people. Ambilineal societies, the most common in Southeast Asian countries, where they look only to you get to actually associate their children with the kinship of either the mother or the father, but you pick one. And then the famous sexism of patriarchal societies, lineage is passed down through the father's last name more commonly throughout the standard of norm, so much more so that people are seen as deviant for choosing not taking the family name. Many of you have probably wondered or had friends who were maybe getting married or have family who got married, and did they take the husband's last name? Did they do this because they wanted to, or because it was a traditional value that we've always done this? It's interesting. We're seeing a lot of hyphenated and combination of names. I'm loving seeing that. But yeah, kinship's pretty interesting. Feel free to study this slide if you find it more. So let's look at living situations. Kinship also can refer to the dynamics of when we're on our family and how we live. So living situation, residence. Patriarchal residence system is wife lives near the husband's family and blood relatives. You can see a lot of this. There's a lot of social control and power to it, right? Like you aren't able to live near your family. You're disconnected from your social bonds and your connections. This practice was traced for thousands of years, so much so that the Chinese symbol for grandmother, I can't pronounce this properly, so I'm not going to, translates to outsider and women. So what you see by Cohen saying this in 2011 is that there are even powerful labelings to this, which would be symbolic interactionalism. Matriarchal residence systems, husband moved closer to the women side of the family, which is interesting. Husbands face the label of outsider, but they don't have a lot of stigmatization to this, and there's less scrutiny on this. There's an old adage that a man marries away from his family. I mentioned this before. So it's interesting to think that this may not have as much scrutiny because a lot of people just expect this to happen. Sure happened with my brother. I'd tell the story in class if I needed to buy time, but I don't, but I've seen this in my life. Now, there are different types of family, and this is important to notice. Nuclear family, this isn't as common as it used to be. It used to be the standard of norm. It's not anymore. But this is married parents and their children, cohabitating nuclear families. Non-married parents and their children, opposite or same-sex couples can still be considered nuclear families. We have a rise in the single-parent family, which is definitely connected to socioeconomic disparities and changes in societies. People who see that they don't need a family anymore, but this could be for better or for worse, based on your opinion. One parent, maybe due to divorce, death, or just decided they didn't really want to have somebody and they would just get a donor, right? Extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and relatives, married and cohabitating without children, and staying single. If you're curious, as I've said, never gonna have children. So terms like me are referred to as DINK, right? Or SINK, dual income, no kids, single income, no kids. There's acronyms for these because how families are structured is very socially significant. Many people hold a lot of anger or bias towards people who don't follow the standard of norm. So the types of families plays a large role in social institutions because society really deems how a family is supposed to be. I can't tell you how much scrutiny I get on a day-to-day basis by random strangers when I tell them I don't want children. They keep telling me, oh, you'll want them. Oh, she'll change her mind. It's funny because we tell people socially in this behavioral analysis how we're supposed to act, and it's because we're following the structure of society. Some divorce facts for you here, just to kind of go through them for you. Normal by today's standards, hardly so in the past. Yeah, it really wasn't normal in the past. In the 1960s, divorce rates were at 9.1 out of every 1,000 married couples, 20.3 out of 1,000 couples in 1975. So you started seeing a little bit of change, and it peaked in the 80s at 22.6 out of every 1,000. This is according to Papanoi in 2007. So where are they now, if you're curious? Because I know this only goes up to 2007. Well, they're closer to that of the 1970s at 20.3 out of every 1,000 married couple persons are divorced. So we're seeing a lot of changes, ebbs and flows. It's probably even higher based after pandemic data. But you see a lot of changes when things become normified, people have the ability to do so. I mean, think about these times, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You saw a renaissance of sin, sickness, and selected. A lot of religions were making it possible that you could get out of marriage. A lot of people were unfaithful in their marriages, but women weren't able to get bank loans during certain times or any type of fiscal ability. So staying married was the only option. So good thing to think about. Are divorce rates the same geographically? Yeah, the answer is no on that, just in general. Northeast United States has the lowest rate of divorce at 7.2 to 7.5, whereas the South has the highest at 10.2 for men and 11.1 for women. I find this fascinating. If you're actually interested in looking into this for Yellow Dig, wouldn't you think that the South would have a higher with the lower education rates of divorce, but yet the Northeast, which has the higher education, has a lower divorce rate? It's interesting to me. Why do you think this is? It could be because of age, educational attainment, race, religious affiliation. There's plenty of reasons that it could go down this path. What are your thoughts? But I did say that race impacts divorce, and I think that's important to mention. Native Americans or indigenous groups and Alaskan Natives have the highest rate of divorce with 12.6%. Black families is the second highest with 11.5%. Whites at 10.8% went third. Pacific Islanders at 8%, and Latino and Latina cultures, Latinx, if you use that term, at 7.8%, and Asian families at 4.9%. And what do you think impacts this? Do you think that there's a lot of requirements, such as with Asian families, there's a high value on not doing this? Is it very similar to the 60s and the 70s that there's social constructions blocking this? Why does Native Americans and Native Alaskans have this issue? I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that race plays into this? Another factor is those who have higher education or marry later in their lives have a lower rate of divorce. This has a lot to do with the idea that now I'm marrying because I want to and I have the fiscal means to do so. It's not made for points of opportunity, which a lot of socioeconomic status plays into that too. So I'm sure you've heard 50% of marriages end in divorce. Is this true? Well, it's not statistically true. 41% is the highest divorce rates have ever peaked. Hurley mentioned this in 2005. However, there is hope for love, as my slide says, but don't get too excited. Because children of divorce are 40% more likely to get divorced if their parents are divorced and then remarried, which is common. That child's chance of getting a divorce is around 91%, according to Wolfinger in 2005. So the more you see something, it becomes normified. The more it becomes normified, the less it's become taboo and stigma. Therefore, if your family got divorced and remarried, now you know that you don't have to remain married and you can always get remarried if it's not working. So 41% chance is for your first marriage. And if your parents were divorced and if you've been a part of divorce and remarriage, your number jumps up to almost 91%. And every divorce that you have incurs the next marriage will have a higher divorce rate. In sociology, that's not on the stats, but essentially, if you're in a situation where you've been divorced around 5 times, statistically, you almost have a 100% chance of getting a divorce on the 5th one. So it's very much common to say the more you've had, the more maybe you should think about not doing it, maybe just stay in a relationship. So how does that break down? Well, 19.3% of all married couples are in their second marriage currently, and more than 3 times account for 5.2% of all married couples, according to the US Census in 2011. So what you're looking at is divorces become almost standard of practice, which is sad to hear, but it's also why you see the divorce rate skyrocketing. So with 91% of the second marriages occur after divorce, only 9% are after the loss of a spouse. So many times widowers are very rare. It's more commonly that people couldn't bond, They cited unreconcilable differences. 5 years is the average time between divorce and remarriage. So that's the average, right? Men are more so 3 years and women are about 4.4 years. So what you're looking at is there's a variance between. The data here is just showing you that 5 years is pretty much the average. That doesn't mean that's the rule of law, just when we average it in the median. But men tend to get married a little sooner. Women take a little bit longer. So live, laugh, love, and always remember, sign that prenup. So let's go into a little bit of socioeconomic statuses and marriages. So what does this mean? Divorces happen more commonly to those with less wealth. Couples who enter a relationship without at least $10,000 in assets, remember, income and wealth are different. Homes and savings and retirement plans are 70% more likely to be divorced after 3 years than couples who have these securities. What does this mean? Money hurts, yo. Biggest thing you'll ever fight with your partner later in life is going to be money, bills, blah, 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 blah. So if you don't have the resources, it makes marriage hard. The more you have, the more you have to lose. So if you think about that from Hershey's control theory, it's why would you leave? Well, if you have nothing to lose, then there's every reason to leave. If you have lots to lose, there's more reasons to leave, right? So what you're looking at is an ideology that if you are wealthy enough that it doesn't hurt you, then what matters? But at the same time, if you have millions and millions and millions of dollars and you don't have like backup, if you divorce, you lose 50% unless you have a prenup. So a lot of people stay married and make agreements. A lot of the high upper class are in one marriage, but they're very vastly unfaithful. So lots of stuff there to be said. Marriage is an ideology, a belief, and a value. If we are shown or experience this not to be as such, you are not likely to treasure it. So your right values and beliefs are different. To truly love someone, you must love yourself. And as cheesy as that sounds, it's hard. Some data here for you if you're interested in looking at it. The divorce rates as per 1,000 people going all the way up to 2011 here. Interesting stuff to see the rise and the fall. Stats and reality checks of domestic abuse. We're going to go into this now. In sociology, we refer to domestic abuse as IPV, or intimate partner violence. Sociologists created the term so that people who were cohabitating and living together weren't faced of the exclusionary behavior of not being considered a married couple. So IPV allows this categorization and being able to be categorized and understood. It incorporates the idea of emotional, physical, and intentional harm to do so. So you're not just beating somebody, it's also you can take mental damage, right? Acts of violence in this country happen every 18 seconds. 18 seconds. A woman is abused every 9 seconds. Count to 9, someone's been abused. IPV in 2010 that involved only physical altercations on women was 57%, 9% involved rape and physical violence, 14% involved physical violence and stalking, while 4% was only rape, strictly rape. This is what the CDC reported in 2011. There's been change on the recent data. Feel free to look it up. IPV is not equal. It varies across social and racial barriers, violence and abuse. IPV affects different segments of the population in different ways. It really does. Black women are hit at 4.6 per 1,000 as opposed to those of white at 3.1 per 1,000. Scarily, the number for Native Americans and Alaskans have actually gone up even higher to 11.1 for females, according to Catalino in 2007. I know these stats are scary. I'm sorry, just breathe. Individuals who are separated report higher levels of IPV as opposed to married counterparts, and the rates of cohabitation also reports a higher IPV rates. Stetz and Strauss talk about this. This might be something to do with the legalities behind marriage. I'm not sure, but it's a little scary to see that separated people and those who are just cohabitating have a higher abuse ratio with IPV. Maybe you could see this in the Johnny Depp situation, depending on how you look at it. IPV rates also double for women who are in low income and disadvantaged areas compared to those in affluent areas. Benson and Fox talk about this. This may also have much to do with the ability to realize that the police aren't going to do anything if you're in a bad neighborhood, as opposed to a good neighborhood, or feeling like you have no option if you're economically strapped. So IPV sadly is hard to accurately predict because a lot of it goes unreported. This is a big issue. And, I could talk a lot about this if you're interested. A lot of people don't report it, whether it be for machismo for men or just for the lack of accountability, believing that no one's going to come. So there's a lot of fear on this. And there's a lot of stats on this and data on this. And it's just something for you to be aware of when it comes to the inequalities faced by people of different economic barriers, social and racial categories, and how violence stems between social systems. Harsh truths about IPV. Here's some reasons that we don't see reporting and some different numbers. To consider private matter, 22% of females don't report it, males 39. Interesting. Fear of retaliation, women have a higher rate here with 12 to 5 with men, right? Protect the abuser, 14 to 16, pretty equal right there, pretty scary. And then believe the police won't do anything, about even. So the responses kind of show a story here. You see that women tend to have a little bit less of a problem reporting private matter, but men don't want to talk about it, which could be machismo. Fear of retaliation, this is bigger on the women's side, makes sense because if you poke the lion, he might get drunk and really hurt you, like really hurt you. Physicality dynamics, protect the abuser, both are pretty similar, that we feel we're trying to protect the person. It wasn't their fault, they were drunk, they had too many drinks, too many smokes. So a lot of reasons these IPV things happen, scary. Children and abuse, I'm going to kind of clear through these. Children are amongst the most helpless victims of abuse. In 2010, there were more than 3.3 million reports of child abuse involving an estimated 5.9 million children, according to Child Help in 2011. A lot of this has to stem from the increase in rates. Is also because we had mandatory reporting starting happening, which is a good thing. 3/5 of child abuse reports are made by professionals, including teachers, law enforcement, etc. This wasn't the case before. That's why the number spiked. It used to be only that a medical professional could report it. Now we have the ability of anyone to be able to at least alert child abuse. So the numbers have risen. But the problem with this is also with an increased amount of awareness, what also happens is that you start seeing people slip through the cracks. So child abuse isn't only a poverty level issue, it occurs in all quintiles of society. However, child abuse in lower economic situations face more severity of this abuse and less likelihood that police can get involved. And child abuse is not only a horrible thing, but think about the impacts. And this is why IPV is great, of psychological, physical, and emotional well-being, because if we look at all those, the impacts of a bruise may heal, but the damage done to your brain may not. So it's very important to acknowledge this. All right, this is a lot of information here. I'm going to stop this video right now, and then we'll go into the social systems of education on the next video. Hopefully this one wasn't too long. I understand this is a lot of material. I will see you in the next video, which I'm going to record after this. Watch it when you'd like. Again, always email me with questions, queries, or anything you'd like to know. I look forward to speaking with you, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.